Good morning. If there are members of the Toronto East York Community Council in their offices, we need you here for quorum. We've got 5 minutes. Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to call meeting 10 of the Toronto East York Community Council to order. The Chair and members gratefully acknowledge that the Toronto East York Community Council meets on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the October 10th meeting? Councillor Wong Tam, all those in favour, opposed, carried. Members, before we go through the agenda, I want to acknowledge that we have some special visitors today. We have the grade 6 class from Jackman Public School, their Councillor Fletcher isn't here right now, but we expect her shortly, and I acknowledge the teacher with the class, Mr. Ellis. Welcome. You're here to witness democracy in action. Okay, members, we will start our agenda clearing on page 25 of the yellow sheets or orange sheets with item TE 10.21. Appointments to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management. Is there anyone who can move that for me? Councillor Cressy, all those in favour, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.22, 315 and 325 Front Street West and the rail corridor between Blue Jay Way and John Street Rod Robbie Bridge, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Cressy.
I will move the staff recommendations and note that we've had this meeting.
It's good that we're voting to have a meeting that's already taken place. So all those in favour? Opposed? That carried. So that meeting really did happen. Councillor Fletcher, these students from Jackman are yours. You might want to wave them.
Everybody, including the big students at the back, look at it.
Item TE 10.23, 182 to 184 Spadina Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment application preliminary report. Councillor Cressy.
I will move the staff recommendations. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 10.24, 160 to 163 Bathurst Street, official plan and zoning amendment applications preliminary report. Councillor Matlow.
Sorry, I will move the extended notification boundary and the item.
So this is the expanded notification.
No, not necessarily. I'm
Just the
moving the expand it to about 20 miles on either side.
This is the 120 meters.
It's been the 120 meters of
Councillor Matlow, the staff recommendation
Good.
is the expanded notice, so just as is?
Here we go.
Here we go. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.25, 373 Front Street East and 90 Mill Street zoning amendment application preliminary report. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would also need to move an amendment. The first recommendation is to amend the meeting requirements to include light refreshments and, when required, childcare and accessible resources, including sign language interpretation at the sole cost of the applicant. And the second recommendation is to ensure that we can set up a working group for the site plan process at the end of, closer to the end of the process.
Okay, so we'll take the amendments together with the main item. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
One day these are going to include like a wine list. Dry Chardonnay also needs to be included by the developer.
When we're talking
Please
about
state 20.
Ontario wines only, correct?
Ontario wines only.
To be fair, when we're asking residents to join us in evening meetings and they're rushing from work, the very least we can do is provide them some light refreshments, and it generally is cookies, coffee, tea, or maybe, if you're lucky, sandwiches. They're not great options, I can tell you. Unless you're in Yorkville.
We don't conform to the
In
Health
Yorkville, the
Canada
spread is very
diet
different.
guide? We don't conform to the Health Canada diet?
There is no alcohol. I've never seen alcohol served at these meetings.
Okay. We might have to run this by public health at some point. Item TE 10.26, designation of fire routes, an amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes, 2 Seacourt Avenue and 90 Eastdale Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Item TE 10.27, construction staging area time extension, Phase 2, Yonge Street and Bloor Street West, 1 Bloor Street West. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. There's a motion, and this is just to include, and it's not specified, it's written in the body of the report, but to amend the motion to include the pedestrian portion of the sidewalk to be maintained. And this is going to be a tall, tall tower.
Yes. Okay, so the amendment and the item together, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.28, construction staging area time extension, 53 Ontario Street. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, I would need to, sorry, I'm moving the staff recommendations. I apologize.
On the staff recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. Item TE 10.29, construction staging Portland flood protection and enabling infrastructure project. Councillor Fletcher. We'll hold that in Councillor Fletcher's name. Item TE 10.30, accessible loading zone, Matilda Street. Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher is moving that item. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.31, accessible loading zone, Woodmount Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.32, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, October 2019, delegated. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.33, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, October 2019, non-delegated. Councillor Bradford, this is only in your ward this time.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. We move now to some items that were previously deferred. Item TE 10.34, Commercial Boulevard Parking Appeal, 170 Bedford Road. Councillor Layton.
Yes, do the clerks have a motion on this? Then I'll hold it down because there's a motion coming.
So we'll hold that for later for Councillor Layton. Item TE 10.35, Parking Amendments, Clendenin Avenue. I'll move that. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.36, Parking Amendments, Bay Street. Councillor Cressy.
I will move the staff recommendations. Thank you.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.37, Parking Amendments, Wood Street. Councillor Wong Tam. 37 Wood Street.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.38, Parking Amendments, Dundas Street East. Councillor Fletcher. Dundas Street Parking Amendments.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the small no parking area to improve sightlines for Hills Avenue be instituted, and so move.
So you move the staff recommendations?
And I'm just sorting out the Portland's stuff. That's why I'm not at the table.
Well, I'm glad you're here to sort the Portlands out. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.39, Parking Amendments, Westlake Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.40, reduction of permit parking hours, Pelham Avenue.
I'd like to hold that on behalf of Councillor Bailao.
So we'll hold that in your name until Councillor Bailao is here. Item TE 10.41, extension of permit parking areas, Area 6K during the 2019 Christmas market. Councillor Cressy.
I'll move the staff recommendations and express my deep thanks to Transportation Services for making this happen.
You have all of our thanks.
Deep thanks.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. I always take the TTC to the Christmas market.
How often do you go to the Christmas?
Every year.
Oh, really? Huh?
Every single year. Item TE 10.42, payment in lieu of parking, 421 Roncesvalles Avenue. I'll move that. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.43, traffic signal controls, Bathurst Street and Wellington Street West. Councillor Cressy.
Does clerks have my motion on it? They do. I have an amendment. First, if I can put it on the screen. So I have a motion to amend this and to approve the staff recommendations. And this is for additional work to be done between now and council, working on some of the domino impacts to ensure that we're adequately addressing them comprehensively.
Okay. So we'll take the amendment and the item together. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.44, temporary safety improvements, Power Street. Councillor Wong Tam.
I need to hold this item down. Thank you.
Okay, we'll hold that. Item TE 10.45, extending approval for the Parklet Cafe on Duncan Street, delegated. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. I'm going to move the staff recommendations. And just note, this was one of the first cafes on a street within a space that was previously parking. It is now, we've had to every year approve it again and again and again. This is to establish that it will be delegated going forward. It's a great initiative, and now we don't have to have a motion on it every year.
Very good. So on that exciting civic improvement, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.46, extending approval for year-round operation of parklets and parklet cafes on King Street and Duncan Street, non-delegated.
Councillor Cressy, I just got a motion. So
I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm going to hold it down for one moment as we're still working through just the final motion on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, a little bit of councillor rivalry going on? Is that what I hear? Okay. Okay.
What is vibrant in Forest Village right now?
Well, I'm just going to let you all know that my ward is the best ward. We've settled that. Item TE 10.47, speed hump poll results, Kendall Avenue. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. I have an amendment to delete the word "not" and to authorize the installation of traffic calming on Kendall.
Okay, so this is to amend it to install the speed hump.
Your best speech of the day.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.48, speed hump poll results, Walmer Road. Councillor Layton.
Yes, the same motion to delete the word "not" and to authorize the installation of traffic calming. Both polls were in favor, they just didn't meet the minimum requirement. With gratitude to the former councillor.
All those in favor, opposed, that
We even
carries.
started these.
Okay, we have speakers on item TE 10.49, so we'll hold that for deputations.
Oh, and then we have to add 50 to 54.
I need a motion to introduce new business items, TE 10.50 through TE 10.54. Can I have a motion to introduce? Councillor Bradford, all those in favor, opposed, carried. So we'll add those to the end of the agenda.
Did I not have to do it?
Yeah,
Pardon?
I'm still working, I just got it, sorry.
okay.
Yeah, I'm going to work on it.
Are any of those ready for consideration?
Yeah, the ones
Have they
that
been distributed?
circulated are up to
So
number 54.
we're not yet at 10 o'clock. Do we have 9:30 scheduled items? We do have 9:30 scheduled items. So we'll go to item TE 10.1, naming of an existing public lane east of Tecumseh Street extending southerly from Richmond Street west. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, are there any questions of staff? No? Councillor Cressy?
Thank you. So I'm first of all going to move the staff recommendations. And just a brief note on this. This is members in the community in the area approached us about renaming a laneway after Gershon Iskowitz. It's Holocaust Education Week, and Gershon was a Holocaust survivor who immigrated to Canada in 1949. And he established a studio on Tecumseh, and he became a renowned artist across this country. And it's, as we recognize people like Gershon, it strikes me in the midst of Holocaust Education Week, which we're in today, that stories like his amidst tragedy, it was his perseverance that helped to make this city a better place. And I want to thank the residents and businesses for bringing forward this recommendation, staff for approving it, and I'm just thrilled that future generations will get to see Gershon Iskowitz for all time. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Oh, look, you've got support in the crowd. There you go. They all voted for it. Okay. Item TE 10.2, naming of an existing public lane north of Queen Street East extending between Parliament Street and Truffin Street. I have a registered deputation, Coralina Lemons. Good morning, Coralina. So just take a seat. And if you could just see, is the microphone lit in front of you?
Okay, you hear me?
Yeah. So you'll have 5 minutes. You can watch your time on this clock over here to my right. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I want to thank Council and Councilor Wong Tam for putting this through. I was the person who nominated for this name of this street. Also on behalf of the great-great-grandson for Meyer Walensky, I had no idea about this particular, and I also got this support from the Jewish Historical Society. The one thing, though, is that I was the one who nominated it. I was the one who researched. I was also the one who went knocking on doors for people to get their approval. I did all the work. I also did the description, which is quoted here in this paper. Now, I know I may not be Margaret Atwood, but the one thing that I ask is, if my words are quoted, that my name be included, and it's not. So I think that that's only the fair and respectful thing to do. So that's what I wanted to leave with this, to get your approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Coralina? Councillor Wong-Tam?
Coralina, thank you very much for all the work that you did, and specifically your request about making sure that your name is attached to this report. There's one sentence that sort of introduces the actual blurb that's set out in the quotations. The following background and documentation was provided by the applicant, and then there's a set of colons. Would it be satisfactory to just put your name there and amend the report in such a way?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So it will just stand for the public record.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make sure that the clerks caught my remarks on that. Okay, I think that the
Tam,
chair
could
is
you,
going to provide
for the clerks so that
Okay.
we can figure out how to word that?
Yes, thank you.
So in the staff report on this item,
Thank you.
there's a, Councillor Wong-Tam can show you where. We just want to insert a couple words for the public record.
This is on number 2. Yeah, yeah, we have that. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay?
We can just add that in the system. Sure, we can do that. And then it'll be on the public website.
So,
Just take it in the spirit of them. Is that okay?
yeah, so we don't need a motion on that? We can just have the clerks
It's in
undertake?
the comment section, it's not in the recommendation
Right,
section.
so we can't
it's not
recommend,
really-
but you will change
fix
the,
it, yeah, we'll fix
okay.
it right now. Okay?
Where did Coralina go? So because it's in the body of the report, we're not amending recommendations. The clerk's office will undertake to put that change on the public document, so it will be on the public record forever. Okay? Very good. Okay, so with that, Councillor Wong-Tam, questions of staff or moving the item?
I would like to move the recommendation that's before us and to actually name this particular lane, Meyer-Wilinski Lane, and to extend formal thanks to Coralina for all the extraordinary work she did as an active citizen in the community. It's not every day that we have a resident that will knock on every single door to make sure that she's brought forward support from her neighbors, especially since there's lots of history in Corktown, some of it better known than others, and making sure that we can actually have a process around public education. And I want to thank her specifically for doing the work with such care and doing the research with such thought. And it's not lost on me that we've actually gone through a number of naming exercises in the downtown core, and specifically, and I don't necessarily see this level of deep research into the importance of who that individual is. Sometimes we get a name that's submitted to us, and then the staff will canvass for some support, but it's always great to see such a rich background to the recommendation, and for that I'm very grateful.
Okay, so on the motion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.3, naming of an existing public lane east of Dawes Road extending southerly from Denora Drive. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on this matter? Seeing none, any questions of staff? No. Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much. This is a funny situation where the residents on this particular street don't actually have access to the front of Dawes Road where the front of their houses is. So they don't have a sidewalk or anything. And often the case is the services which are collected off the rear laneway are not picked up. So this is an effort to get that unnamed street there, laneway named, so that we can improve service delivery and snow removal there. I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
On the motion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 10.4, naming of an existing public lane north of Kingston Road extending easterly from Lawler Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on this matter? Seeing none. Questions of staff? No. Councillor Bradford.
like to move the staff recommendations, please.
All those in favor, opposed, that carried. Item TE 10.5, renaming of a portion of Coxwell Avenue between Queen Street East and Lakeshore Boulevard East. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on this matter? Seeing none. Councillor Fletcher?
I do have a motion, and it's almost ready, so if we give our great clerk 2 seconds, that would be great.
So we can all just relax a little bit, enjoy the great lighting in the committee room.
Enjoy all the students from Jackman School that are here.
Wave again. There we go. Anyone started their Christmas shopping
At the Christmas market.
at the Christmas market? It's funny how the room is quietest when we're not working.
Councillor Fletcher, to proceed with the Lower Coxwell, you mean?
To precede it on the sign. Mhm.
Okay,
You have it?
so do you want to move the motion and speak to it? Go ahead.
I do, as soon as it's there. There we go. There is the motion, and it is that the Toronto and East York Community Council requests staff of the Indigenous Affairs Office to provide an appropriate street name to precede the new Lower Coxwell designation and report to the Toronto and East York Community Council on December 3rd, 2019. This is a new street name. First of all, it's back here. Strangely, ECS staff did not have the new boundaries of the wards in order to have both of our wards on. So all the mapping services in the city, I think that's kind of cute. So this is back here, and it would be great, any opportunity that we have to bring forward names of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat peoples, Mississaugas, any historic names that we can have a chance to add to a street, and in particular when we're naming a new street, I think that I would like to make sure that happens as often as possible. So Coxwell from Queen to all the way up to O'Connor and past O'Connor is designated with addresses. This section between Lakeshore and Queen does not have any addresses. It basically is unnamed, although we called it Coxwell. So this will be called Lower Coxwell, but I believe with a fantastic, very meaningful Indigenous name to precede it. So we can remember all of the time that who came before us, whose land we're on, and in particular when we're near the lake because of the importance of water and the Ashbridges marsh, which fed thousands and thousands of people with fishing for many years. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to have that moved.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to the item? Seeing none, we'll take the amendment and the item together. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. The next item is TE 10.6, 540 to 544 King Street West and 1 through 7 Morrison Street zoning bylaw amendment application final report. Members of the public, I have close to a dozen registered deputants. I want to advise you that I've been informed that the councillor's intention is to defer this item for further report. Typically, we restrict people to only deputing on an item once, and therefore, if you were to depute today and it were the same item when it comes back, you would not be given an opportunity to depute again. However, I understand that there will be some changes brought forward, so if those changes raise new issues, people who do speak today will be permitted to speak again next time. So with that advice, and recognizing that the item will be back here again, so you will get your chance later, I'm just going to read through the list and see if people want to make a deputation today or if they'd rather hold off till the item comes back. Alma Mikulinski. Is Alma here? No. Sebastian Davila. Sebastian? No. Ursula Wotira? You won't be speaking. Thank you. Sonia Wasik? Please do come up. Hi, just have a seat. Yeah, any chair's good. Just make sure the light's on your microphone in front of you. Okay, you'll have 5 minutes and you can watch your time over there.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So my intention in speaking, knowing that I can't speak again in December, is to represent this, that you have some framework to apply when it comes to you next in December or so on. Just want you to understand the community that this is in. So 20 Brant Street is a school located at Brant in Adelaide. It's a 4-story school in a heritage building. It has a small playground, almost no interior gym, and it is flanked on all sides by this urban community. I'd like to have you understand that we understand that we're in an urban community and we don't reject development at all, but we're asking for sympathetic development that recognizes that a school is neighboring and that a community of residential people are neighboring it, and that when you bring a design into a community, you need to help fit it into the community, not impose whatever values are in that design to the community that exists. And so what we're finding right now is that the design proposed is 50 meters high, and if that number doesn't make sense to you, it's about 15 stories high. It has, it's an L shape, so it's a bit of a strange shape, and it flanks the south and the west side of the school. So it encloses the school in a large, tall massing with no uninterrupted space. That results in a shadow on the school on the west side of the building from 12 to 4. And that means on the west side of the building, and these are some, it's a heritage building, these are big windows that let in lots of light. That means that there's no sun coming in from 12 to 4 inside the school building. On the playground itself, there is no sun between 2 and 4. And before, there might be some considerations that, well, the school ends at 3:30. It doesn't for a lot of kids. A lot of parents can't pick their kids up at 3:30. My own 2 children, Max and Rex and JK in grade 1, have to stay there until 6. I'd like to also you to understand a little bit about the school. The school itself has about 75 kids. It's 4 stories. It's JK to grade 6 for the first 3 stories. And then on top of that are high school students on the 4th floor. It's a community that has interacted with the local residents in ways that are special. It has an annual Halloween parade around the block. It gives out hot chocolate when it's ride your bike to work day, or ride your bike day. I think they do that in the spring. It's a special little community, and it's a school. And I know that there's been a lot of consideration given to St. Andrew's Park on Adelaide Street because it is a treasured public space. We believe that the school also needs to be given the kind of attention that that Adelaide Park is given. It is also a public space. It should never leave the public realm and therefore it should be valued as much as St. Andrew's Playground. We find that the design itself is dissonant with the secondary plan for King and Spadina, that it doesn't meet some of the criteria within it. It doesn't recognize the community it's in. It's sort of a mean design. I mean, the facade is no doubt very pretty along King, but it's a mean design in that it just tries to take up every available square footage and build as high as it is allowed. So it's trying to maximize the space, but without acknowledging the kind of impacts it has on everyone around it. And, when I come here speaking on behalf of the school, I'm also really acknowledging the community that surrounds this building, this proposed design. The 10 Morrison Street residents, the neighborhood associations, everyone that's involved and has been in discussion with this. I'd also like to recognize that we have been involved in conversations with this community process since 2018, and we've always had the same position, and the same design is still present. So that's why we have taken to more vocal means. So, and lastly, I'd like to leave you with this kind of idea that the school itself, it prioritizes outdoor education. That is one of its mandate and one of its central pedagogies. If this building as it is built, it will take away the kind of outdoor experience that you would expect. Yes, I've got 3 seconds. Outdoor experience that you want kids to have. And so we're asking you to value that as much as you do public spaces like the parks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you
any
for letting me
questions
speak.
of the deputy? No? Thank you, Sonia. Isabella Wotira? Spencer Langley? Morning, Spencer. Thank you, Spencer. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the clock to my right. Up, right there. Oh, it didn't clear. Hang on.
Thank you. I'm a chairman of the board of directors at 76. I represent 332 owners. Our condo neighbors to the west of the proposed development at 560 King Street West. We find the proposed development deeply troubling because it fails to conform to the official plan, the King Spadina Secondary Plan, the King Spadina Heritage Conservation District Plan, the city's Heritage Register, the Provincial Policy Statement of 2014, and the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The proposed development doesn't properly conserve heritage resources and reflects clear and measurable overdevelopment for the site. The proposal has numerous inadequate setbacks, is too tall, and the massing is out of scale and inappropriate for the existing character of the area. The proposed development will also make Morrison Street, a narrow, highly congested, dead-end street, completely congested with traffic and dangerous for vehicles and pedestrians alike. Consequently, it will encourage vehicles to use the private driveway of 560 King Street to access the proposed development on Morrison Street. It is incumbent upon Council to not only reject this proposed development, but also challenge this proposed development at the local planning appeal tribunal. Starting with height, the proposed development does not conform to the zoning bylaw because the building's height is more than double the height limit. The proposed building would have a height of 50 meters when the zoning permits a height of 23 meters. The proposed development also does not conform to the provincial policy statement, the official plan, the King Spadina secondary plan, and the growth plan. The building is not well designed, doesn't fit harmoniously in its existing and planned context, and reflects clear and measurable overdevelopment for the site. The proposed development is too tall, and the massing is out of scale and inappropriate for the west precinct of King Spadina. For context, the proposed development is 50% taller than the neighboring building at 560 King Street and 46% taller than the neighboring building at 10 Morrison. The proposed development will destroy the light, view, and privacy of the residents at both 560 King Street and 10 Morrison. The impact will be felt by all 332 residents at 560 King Street, as the proposed development will overlook the 9th floor amenity space and rooftop pool. This violates the provincial policy statement, which requires that new developments must provide adequate light and privacy and limit resulting shadowing of neighboring properties. Stepbacks. The stepbacks of the proposed development violate the policies of city planning staff and city's heritage register. For the city planning staff require a minimum 5.5 meter step back from any property line that is not a street. For 40% of the west property line at 548 King Street West, the proposed development has a step back of only 2 meters. This critical deficiency will have several negative impacts. It will severely limit the redevelopment potential of the adjacent property at 548 King Street West, and it will also tarnish the light, view, and privacy of the residents at both 560 King Street and 10 Morrison, violating the requirements of the provincial policy statement. Similarly, the stepbacks along the property line surrounding 12 Brant Street are inadequate. The north property line at 12 Brant Street has a step back of only 3 meters, and the east property line of 12 Brant Street has a step back of 0 meters. This will severely limit the redevelopment potential of the adjacent property at 12 Brant Street. The existing heritage building at 544 King Street West is set back approximately 5.5 meters from King Street West. This setback is identified as one of the heritage attributes of the building and a reason for its inclusion on the city's heritage register. Under the proposed development, the front wall of the heritage building at 544 King Street West would be retained and move forward approximately 5 meters. This would eliminate the existing setback of the heritage building at 544 King Street West, violating the intent of the city's heritage register. City policy states that continuous wraparound balconies are not permitted to encroach into any of the setback areas, yet the proposed development includes several wraparound balconies that encroach on the required setbacks. The residential entrance and loading access on Morrison Street. The proposed development plans to position the residential entrance on Morrison Street and connect 3 loading docks to Morrison Street. Morrison Street is a narrow, highly congested dead-end street. Morrison Street is frequently backed up with cars and trucks from vehicles accessing the commercial businesses at 548 King Street, including Belfast Love and Blue Elephant Realty, the residences and businesses at 560 King Street, and the residences at 10 Morrison. The addition of a residential lobby, including mailroom, and loading bay access would make Morrison Street virtually impossible to navigate. This would not only create a dangerous situation for drivers and pedestrians, but it would encourage vehicles to use the private driveway of 560
Spencer, could I ask you to wrap
access
up,
the
please?
proposed development on Morrison Street.
Okay, those are your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the deputant? No, seeing none. Thank you, Spencer. Nick Hawkins. Very good. Max Allen. Good morning, Max. You know the drill.
Good morning. I'm Max Allen. I'm the Vice President for Planning and Development of the Grange Community Association. Given the concerns you've heard and others, and the famous goodwill and competence of Allied and Great Gulf and the architects, our association and our colleagues at the Garment District Neighborhood Association favor a deferral of this item. The proposed building can be improved, and we trust it will be. That's it.
Thank you, Max. Are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none. Is there a little prize for shortest, most succinct dep that we give? Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Yes, sir. Please come forward and tell us who you are.
Good morning, Council. My name is Dieter Riedel. I'm the president of the Condominium Corporation at 10 Morrison Street, which is TSCC 1984. I've been monitoring and involved with this proposal on this site for about 10 years now. The subject proposal is one of 10 that are on, one of 4, pardon me, that are on that block, which range in height from 45 to 53 meters, since the elevator overrun of this proposal is 53 meters. We have great concerns about how all 4 of these proposals will represent an over-intensification of the block and create a number of detrimental situations to traffic on Morrison Street. In terms of built form, as was mentioned before, the building is significantly outsized compared to other present structures on the block. 52 meters in height by the elevator overrun, over 100 meters in depth in terms of the running through the block. It is, to our view, representative of a high-rise building pushed on its side. The direct sunlight as well as ambient and reflected light from the east and south will be eliminated from penetrating into the mid-block environment between 560 King Street West and 10 Morrison, which is the outdoor space for hundreds of residents of the 2 condominium residences. This building will essentially, this proposal before us will essentially block that light, and it will be permanent. And as I mentioned, there are 3 other proposals on the block which will also have the same effect. The facing distances onto Morrison Street between 10 Morrison and the building under consideration are 19 meters. The first setback for the proposal is equal to the height of 10 Morrison Street and will create a canyon-like environment in that area. And in our view, that will also result in a number of secondary environmental issues, including reflected sound and noise, and the trapping of vehicle exhaust, and if you know the area along King Street, the large number of restaurants which vent out at the lower levels, which create a kind of microclimate for pollution. Under the urban design policy, the official plan requires new developments to address existing built context, and we believe that the scale and size of this proposal right now is in excess of that. In addition, we have concerns about the use of Morrison Street. Morrison is a dead-end street. It's essentially in a failed state right now. One of our residents submitted a large number of photographs and videos of how the street functions right now, and it is not, right now, it is inadequate to service two buildings, as there's this proposal and another one coming forward presently at LPAT. While parking access for the proposed building is moved to Brant Street, heavy loading, delivery, garbage, and other such services are still to be in use on Morrison Street. We think those will just add to the significant traffic issues that are already existing at this point. Since the previous speaker touched on a large number of other issues, I see no point in repeating them. But they are all important, and we believe that those need to be considered as well. Our request to council is also for a deferral for further talks with the developer. We also have an interest in terms of community and the effect of Alpha School. It is one of the few schools that is downtown. It is a green space, and the proposal as is will put that green space and that school in permanent shadow. And we think that given how hard it is to find green space in the downtown and how difficult it is to maintain a school in the downtown where there's an ever-growing population, we think that their concerns need to be a focus as well. That said, we still believe there's an opportunity to change things. We are not opposed to development on the site. We're not opposed to mixed-use development on the site, but we would like to see further improvements to this plan so that what is built is actually reflects the benefits of both the school and the residents and allows the developer to build something that is of use to them as a business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dieter? No? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation to the committee at this time? Seeing none. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll begin. I have a deferral motion with instructions, if it can be put on the screen. I will make a few comments here. First of all, just as a beginning point, I'd like to thank members of the school community, the Garment District Neighborhood Association, and residents within its boundaries, as well as the applicant and our city staff for a lot of work to date on this, but I'm not satisfied that we're there yet. And I just want to tell members of this committee a little bit why. The background on this is complicated. There are actually two development sites that were joined together. One of them had an OMB approval in 2009. And so there was a development site which is incorporated in this that was approved by the OMB in 2009 that has a harmful impact on the school to begin with, including shadow. That's a problem. And it has a harmful impact on some of the local neighboring buildings that we just heard about. So that's one OMB approval. There was another proposed development that has been joined with that formal OMB approval. So that's what's in front of us today. It is a new project. And so in that context, we have a downtown school, one of the few that's immediately adjacent. We have heritage. We also have a small overextended street on Morrison with nearby residents. So what's our objective from my perspective as a councillor and as the city? The starting objective has to be to improve the relationship between a new development over the existing OMB approval. We had a bad OMB approval that's harmful, and so the objective here has to be to, if development is coming here, and it is a development site, and we have an opportunity to improve the relationship between that development site and the local school and the local community, we should. And so we've been at this for coming up on 2 years. City staff went so far as to have consultations with and the developer to go to meet with kids in the school who gave presentations. And I think based on these 2 years of consultations, I will acknowledge, because I don't want to give the impression that nothing's been done, that city staff have secured important changes, right? That there is a lower base building beside the school. There's setbacks where there wasn't before. As it relates to Morrison, there is parking off Brant, not off Morrison, as was proposed before, and with setbacks there. So there have been changes, but I'll tell you, and members of this committee know, rarely am I offside with planning on a recommendation. And so when I am, I don't do so lightly, because a lot of hard work has gone into this. And I want to thank planning for that, sincerely. But based on what's in front of us today, I'm not prepared as the local councillor to endorse the recommendations yet, because fundamentally in a booming downtown and in a vibrant urban community, any new negative impact on the school and new net shadow over and above what the OMB already approved is not acceptable. I think we have to do better than that. And I know this is hard because it's a domino effect. And when you move one thing, you move another. But I'm not satisfied that just because the OMB approved something in the past, that we can't improve it today. And so in terms of where we're going forward, the deferral is, and their directions is to request staff to work with the applicant and the community around further changes. I don't do so lightly, but I do so because I think we can do better than what's in front of us here. We have an applicant in Allied and Great Gulf who we have a good working relationship with and who are invested in this area. So it's important for them, just as it's important for the local community and the school and us, to get to a better resolution. And I don't believe the argument that we should just fight this, because to fight it would be to accept either the previous OMB approval, which wasn't good, or a potential new appeal, which could result in something worse. I believe that we can do better, and I'm hopeful that between now and the next meeting, we'll be able to do that work and come forward with an adjusted proposal to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the mover? No. Anyone else to speak? No. On the motion to adjourn the meeting and defer the item with instructions, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay. We move now to item TE 10.7, 255 Avenue Road, City-Initiated Official Plan Amendment Final Report. I have a number of deputants listed. First, Lorraine Morris. Lorraine? Hi. Welcome. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time over there to my right.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen.
If you could just move a little closer to the microphone.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the time this morning to listen to my comments. I live in the immediate vicinity to J. McPherson Green Park, and the proposal that we're discussing this morning is the relocation of an Enbridge green box. I think it's clear that everyone who's been involved in this matter agrees that the sole reason and justification for moving this box is solely aesthetic. And that causes a problem for myself and another number of other residents on our street. To move the Enbridge box for aesthetic reasons has a number of extremely important consequences, which in my opinion haven't been highlighted at all throughout the process that these discussions have been ongoing. And I just would like to bring before you the items that I think have not been given proper attention and weight. The first is the cost of moving this electrical box. We don't have an exact number or a precise number or a good estimate, but the number that's swirling is up to $1 million. The second requirement with moving this box is that the city will have to give approximately 8% of the park over to a permanent easement, which in my opinion is not something that the city should be doing in this day and age, giving over a substantial amount of green space for a permanent easement for the movement of a box that is being moved purely for aesthetics reasons. The third reason that I object to the box being moved is that the arborist report, the official arborist report, states that 4 trees will have to be destroyed, 4 mature trees that are very important in terms of the environment at the park. And there's also confirmation that 1 further tree will be damaged. Lastly, I actually use the park on a daily basis, as do a number of other residents. And the location that the box is being proposed to be moved to is actually that area of the park which is the most safe and most highly used. So from that element alone, it doesn't make sense to me to have the box moved. I think that the suggestion to move this electrical box is wasteful. I think it's irresponsible. And I frankly think that it's bad environmental stewardship. To give permanent easements for the city to spend up to $1 million to destroy our trees makes no sense to me. My final comment is, if people find the box aesthetically displeasing, we really ought to be looking at a way of softening the look of the box. It would be very, very straightforward to do some softening planting. I'm not an expert in plants and trees, but in the park we could very easily put some bushes and trees around the box, which would no doubt help with the aesthetic offence it's causing. And consequently, this would save the city spending up to $1 million. It would save the city giving permanent easements to Enbridge, and it would also save the trees in our park. Thank you very much for your time. I very much appreciate it. Oh, and just one final point I'd like to make. I'm not sure if it's appropriate at this point to ask either for this recommendation to be rejected, or at the very least, I feel that we could ask for a deferral to have all of the issues that I've brought up be considered fulsomely and properly, because I truly believe that the costs, the land easements, permanent land easements, and the destructions of trees was never fully disclosed throughout this process, and I think it's important that they be taken into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputy? No? Seeing none, thank you very much. Karen Gorsline? Karen? Oh, there you are. Good morning. If you could just make sure that the chair is situated right in front of the microphone so we can hear you better. Thank you.
Whoa.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Let me just get a picture up here first because I have several pictures.
Just put it facing the way you would look at it normally. And yeah, there you go.
Does that work? Yeah.
Yeah.
I am Karen Gorsline. I live at 118 McPherson Avenue. I have lived in the neighborhood since 1975 and have a strong interest in seeing park green spaces, street tree canopy, and front and rear yard landscaping preserved for current and future residents and future generations. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I strongly support the official plan amendment to allow for a permanent easement to facilitate the relocation of Enbridge gas distribution to a more appropriate location at the far southeast corner of J. McPherson Green. And my reasons are that this picture is what the park looked like. It had just been gone through a significant renewal. And if you look right here, you can see that was the Enbridge installation, this little flat metal plate. And so after the changes, this is what happened to the flat metal plate. It changed to this, what we call the bunker, without consideration of its impact or intrusion. The city and Enbridge do need to support growth, but it doesn't need to be done at the expense of parks and the quality of the public realm. In terms of the box, the bunker, it distracts from the park from a number of different perspectives. This particular is a pedestrian and resident perspective from North McPherson, so right across the street from people living there. I have another one here, which is a pedestrian view from the east side of Avenue Road. And if you notice in the background, oops, I need to stop moving it. In the background, there's a water fountain and a seating area, and the walkway through the park goes right back through here, in this area. Okay, and the final view is a view from the interior diagonal parkway. So no matter where you go, what you see is a big green box. The city has recognized that there were processes and policy guidelines flaws resulting in inappropriate results in this case. Utility infrastructure will not be smaller or less intrusive as it grows to meet demand, so it has to be managed. The bunker experience gives us one example of that, and I'd like to show a public realm experience. This is a public realm experience from Charles Street East at Bay, and it isn't a jungle gym. And I want to give you a longer view of that, so you see the context of where it is. You may recognize the location. So what you see is utilities that aren't being managed by the utility company or the city, and some adverse results. So the parks and public realm are to be enjoyed by everyone, local residents, nearby and broader community, those walking through, catching or getting off a bus, visiting friends in the area, or tourists who visit our city. It's in Toronto's best interest to address eyesores and be a beautiful city. So it's not just restricted to people who live immediate adjacent to the area. Investments in renewing J. McPherson Park, along with Sergeant Ryan Russell Park on the opposite side of Avenue Road, need to be protected. An error was made in this case, and it needs to be corrected by moving the bunker to a location more appropriate to growing utility infrastructure. The use of Section 37 funds means relocating the bunker is covered by funds intended to offset community impacts related to development, and development is what is driving larger utility infrastructure. The location here is tucked into a corner. It's less used in a less visible area, and if you notice, there's some wine rack and two bicycle tires in the trees. So it's this area back in here. I'm sure there will be an inconvenience in terms of moving the distribution station from its current location to a less intrusive location, and that's unfortunate. But it will be a limited duration as opposed to the ongoing existence of the current situation. I'm sure others will be speaking about trees, but I would like to point out just one small fact about that, is that there's 3 trees here in the very back, and those are 3 of the 4 trees being talked about. 2 are under 30 centimeters, and the other
If I could ask you
is-
just to give us your final thought, please.
Okay, the final thought is that we need a plan, and thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none? No, I'm very sorry. When you get called, then you'll be able to address the committee. I understand that. When you get called, you'll be able to address the committee. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you could, someone
All
could
right,
just
I'll
tell
get out of the way. Just with
Reorder the
speaking
paper
list?
to
Thank you very
accommodate the
much.
speaker.
Ann Kingston? If you, members of the public, if there are concerns about the timing of a deputation or something like that, there are clerk staff just over here, if you could raise your hand. If you could just alert them in future about any problems like this, it just makes managing the agenda easier. So Ann, did you want to address us?
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to interrupt the process. I just wanted to echo my previous neighbor. I have, excuse me, lived at 206 McPherson Avenue, across from the park, for close to 20 years now, and it is with concern that I saw the erection of this, the bunker as it's known on the street. It not only interrupts the sort of the green space that has been created across from my house, but also the enjoyment of the park more generally. As my neighbor mentioned, it can be seen from every vantage point. It was also concerning that a healthy
a flourishing tree was destroyed in the creation of this park. I wanted to also add the fact that it is wonderful that Toronto creates green space. Particularly this space was named in honor of Jay McPherson. I have a personal relationship with Jay McPherson. She was a professor of mine at the University of Toronto. To honor such an individual with a flourishing, healthy space that everyone can enjoy is really one of the lovely things about living in Toronto. So it was with incredible distress that I saw this particular structure erected to interrupt sort of a barnacle on the landscape that interrupts everyone's enjoyment. Not simply, you know, it's a blight to me as living across the street from it, but that's not my longer term view. I think that this is an opportunity to redress a planning decision that was not fully organized or referred within the neighborhood more broadly. And so that would basically be those are my points that I'd like to make. And I share with my neighbors' concern that this situation is one that can be redressed. There's not very many that we can fix that have been done without thoughtful planning. This is one of them. And I also want to express concern that there's a lot of misinformation about the funding, how it's going to be, the fund that is going to be used. My neighbor Adam Klein will be addressing this more fully, but I think that this is an opportunity to fix a mistake and fulfill the original mandate of Jay McPherson Park. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Good luck catching your flight.
Thank you.
Next, I have Adrian Leem-Hewis. Morning, Adrian. Morning. So, Adrian, you'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the clock over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Adrian Lemus. I currently reside at 167 McPherson, quite close to the park, roughly 5 doors down. I use the park on a daily basis. One of the problems with regards to this amendment and this movement, and time again it comes up, is it's purely for aesthetic purposes. The city is spending a substantial amount of money for purely aesthetic purposes. The area of the park which is used the most is where people wish to put the box. Currently, the box is in the best place of the park, as it is the least used part of the park. That part of the park is at the corner of Avenue Road and McPherson Avenue. You do not see children playing there. You do not see people walking their dogs there. The area where people do walk their dogs and children do kick a soccer ball is precisely where the box and the easement, 8.2% of the park, is to be placed. I'm sure there's an alternative can be found rather than disposing of 8.2% and spending city monies to move this box. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jeffrey Gertner. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning.
Welcome. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time over here on the clock to my right. Please begin.
Good morning. And I thank you for the opportunity to address the Community Council. My name is Jeffrey Gertner, and my wife and I live at 177 McPherson Avenue, directly adjacent to the Jay McPherson Green Park. The Jay McPherson Green Park. I want to express my strong objection to the proposal to relocate the Enbridge gas bunker. This initiative, in my opinion, is ill-conceived and wasteful and has not been adequately communicated to the residents that will be impacted most. This will be the 4th move on our street for this specific Enbridge box in a decade, and the only relocation that is strictly for vanity rather than safety or regulatory reasons. In the report we have all received, in the report that you all received, this rather bland structure has been described as a visual blight, which is a complete exaggeration. To characterize its height of 1.5 meters as soaring and to assert that the installation is placed in a grassy area commonly perceived at the green space entrance is totally untrue. The current location of the box is at one of the busiest and most dangerous spots in the park, near the corner of McPherson and Avenue Road, where no responsible parent would ever allow their children to play. Parents currently gather for good reason in the exact spot where Enbridge is proposing to move the box. This move will also waste up to $1 million, and according to the arborist report of July 2018, could result in the destruction or injury as many as five more mature trees in the park, in addition to the 2 that were recently lost to Dutch elm disease. This represents over 30% of the tree canopy in our park. Just 1 block north of the railroad tracks in the Robinson Davies Park, one can see the impact of the utility unnecessarily removing the trees and replacing them with small seedlings that will take 50 years or more to mature. On top of the exorbitant cost, the destruction of the trees and the box relocation also requires the city to grant not 1, but 3 permanent easements to Enbridge, handing over 8% of the land in the park. I firmly believe that if the residents of our area were presented with a full set of information that could better understand the full impact of this proposal and not decide for themselves on the true merits of the issue. Unfortunately, this has not been the case. Throughout the consultation process, those of us who will be most impacted by the move were never provided with the full story or the impact or the true cost. I was also disappointed that the ABC CRA message sent out this week to the association members, which was heavily positioned to justify the move. Absent was the arborist report, which has never been shared broadly, and the message contained before and after photos that I would classify as highly selective. As a matter of fact, we see this box every day from all of the windows in our house. And when you do move the box to the back, we will still see the box the same way. There are a number of simple and cost-effective solutions that will enable the Enbridge box to blend better into the current environment, such as landscaping. In summary, I urge all of you to reject this misguided and wasteful proposal, save our trees, and focus the city efforts and resources on improving the lives of Torontonians in a true need. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jeffrey? No? Thank you very much. Robert Brown. Now, I'm pretty sure you know the system here.
I am somewhat familiar, yes, sir.
Welcome.
Okay, I know the clock is there, and it's already started. So my name is Robert Brown, and although I don't live on McPherson, as a longtime resident of the area, I'm a very avid walker, and I regularly traverse through J. McPherson Green on my way to visit friends or shopping on Yonge Street. I have never been concerned about the current location of the Enbridge distribution facility. I attended the public meeting held earlier this year and appreciated the information provided by both Enbridge and community planning staff. I came away from the meeting with 3 concerns, some of which you've heard from other residents. That is the rationale for the move, the location of the distribution facility, and the estimated cost or alleged cost that will be incurred. So in terms of the rationale for the move, it is my understanding from reviewing the material and talking to planning that there is no quoted safety issues with its current location. It was put there, it was all approved, and it's perfectly fine. And as requested by the ABC Residents Association, Enbridge Gas is proposing to relocate to its 4th site in the last decade, as I think Mr. Gertner implied. And with all due respect to Councillor Wong Tam, I do not share her view, and I'm quoting, that the new above-ground district station is a visual blight on the narrow green frontage. Quote, it is a massive structure with a footprint measuring just over 2 by 3 meters and soaring 1.5 meters in height. From my perspective, at 1.8 meters tall, I don't consider 1.5 soaring. Maybe an 80-story tower in the downtown is soaring, but not 1.5 meters. The city, a number of years ago, committed to sustaining and expanding the urban forest and adopted a strategic forest management plan covering the period from 2012 to 2022. There were 6 strategic goals in this plan, and number one was to increase canopy cover. That is to protect, maintain, and expand the urban forest to achieve a healthy, sustainable forest with a canopy cover of 40%. Number 2, achieve equitable distribution. So achieve an equitable distribution of the urban forest, increasing canopy where it is most needed. And for those of us who live downtown, certainly we need more canopy, not less. And increasing biodiversity is objective number 3. Basically is increase biodiversity to improve the urban forest resiliency and respond to climate change. Number 4, increase awareness. Increase awareness of the value of trees, the natural environment, and the sensitivity of these resources. Number 5 was to promote stewardship and education of the multiple benefits of the urban forest and building collaborative partnerships for expanding the forest. And number 6, improve information management systems and enhance the ability to inventory, monitor, and analyze the urban forest. And as we saw earlier with the grade 6 class here, it is that generation that's going to be inheriting this. It unfortunately won't probably be mine for several more decades. So I feel that this proposal is significantly at odds with this adopted strategy of the city. And the evidence provided by ABC in their summary of the May 2018 meeting of this body indicates that the motivation is one of aesthetics and personal whimsy and nothing more. In terms of its location, you've already heard from the most impacted residents, that is the residents at 177 and the residents up and down the street. The facility is located at a comfortable distance from the residents on the north side of McPherson Avenue, as well as the residents located on the south side. The new location is much closer to the church, and it is much closer to a new structure going up on Roxborough. The residents have already talked about the arborist report, and I echo their concerns about basically the destruction of roughly 1/3 of this mature canopy. There is mention of this cost. It's a cost that hasn't been formally provided by the city, but it was provided to me by a representative of the ABC as an estimate.
Robert, could I ask you for your final thought, please?
My final thought would be that until such time as the cost estimate has been prepared and reviewed, that it is premature to approve this OPA, and I believe that the most responsible action by this committee would be to either outright refuse it or to defer consideration of this OPA until further data and consultation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Robert? Seeing none, thank you. Adam Klein.
Thank you, Councillor.
Adam? Hello.
Apologies for the interruption before.
That's okay. I hadn't properly instructed members of the public at that point. My fault. Okay, please begin.
So, just to give you an idea, I live where the dot is right there. Ann is my neighbor on the left, and Amrita is my neighbor on the right, and Jennifer Bishop is just down there. They've all given me permission to speak on their behalf. Amrita and Jennifer could not be here. To give you an idea, when I bought the house in 2015, and when I bought the house, and I'm directly across the street from where the box is, that's what I used to look out on when I bought the house. And you can see, we've seen these pictures before. This is the current view. I've lived there, so I've had the house since 2015. And part of me buying the house was the view that I had, and that now I'm stuck with this view. I've also been involved in this process since 2017 as I attended a meeting with Councillor Wong Tam and Enbridge representatives and the ABC Residents Association to discuss the burial or movement of that box. Following the meeting, I was told that the relocation to the southeast corner of the park had been agreed to by the city and Enbridge. And funds were going to be used out of the whatever I think is Section 37 funds, where basically developers pay into that fund, and Enbridge to share the cost, and not city tax dollars to move it into the back corner. It's been 2 years and nothing has been done. The area that box takes up is 12.7 square meters, including all of the bollards which surround it. It's a massive structure right in front of my house. I used to walk my dog across the street. I play with my 3-year-old daughter across the street. It is my main access is how I'd walk into the park. There's been a lot of objection being weighed about the back corner and how terrible it is that there's going to be some trees lost. These 3 trees here that look like one tree almost are 3 of the trees that are being destroyed. So there's 4 trees apparently that are being taken down. And these ones that lean over the back part of the Krishna church. That church, that is the back corner of the church. There are no windows there. Nobody walks in that corner. And as you can see, where it comes out, that area in there of that park is completely unused. It's got garbage in there. There are wheels attached to the tree. Nobody goes in that corner. Everybody plays in the center of the park, and there are lots of people that do. And so there's no reason why that would, at the end of the day, when they first did this, Enbridge put it there because it was already buried there and it was convenient, and didn't discuss with anybody why it would be better where would there be a better place to put it. Had they discussed it, it's almost obvious that this would have been the appropriate corner that affects the least amount, isn't really visible to anybody around there, none of the residents. You know, the resident that runs perpendicular to the park and the people across the street. You couldn't see it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this really comes down to what's in the best interest of the community now and in the future. And the fact is, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that the future of the park, long after people have moved, the current residents have moved, long after people are passed away, and then this box will stay where it's at. And it's our responsibility to move it. And I appreciate that the fact that there's trees being moved from here, I really don't see them contributing significantly to the canopy of the park where people actually are. But I do appreciate that the people on the south side of the street, and I sympathize with them, will endure more construction. And when I moved into the house, there was significant construction for some period of time. But that is it's unfortunate, but we have a community and there are more than a few people there. And this will live on, for some time. And it's a short-term uncomfortableness of going through the process of construction and, for the benefit of the community now and in the future. And I think it's our responsibility to fix something where we have the ability to fix it.
Adam, can I ask you for your final thought, please?
My final thought is this was agreed to. It should have been moved. I am very disappointed that this process is already 2 years in the making. It hasn't started. I feel that the best interests we have to think about the future community, not just the community right now as it is.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Adam? No? Bill Peers. Morning, Bill. You'll have 5 minutes and you can follow your time over here to my right.
My name is Bill Peers. I live on Peers Avenue, about a block away from the park. This gas main is just one of many, that seem to be sprouting all over the city, particularly in the downtown area where I live. They're a blight on the neighborhood. They're a blight on the city. There's no public consultation. These things just go in. It's typical of Enbridge. They've taken over our parks. They're taking over our public spaces. They're taking over our sidewalks. It's and without any public consultation. We probably wouldn't be here today, okay, had Enbridge at least notified the neighbors, notified the residents in the area, and said, look, this is what we're planning on doing. We would have then had maybe the discussion. But no, we're having it now, okay, and we're faced with a big bill. Okay, we could have done this. The city needs to get a handle on this thing, okay? I just like to sort of just talk about Bay and Bloor, okay? This is one of the premier, or the premier shopping area in Toronto, okay? Enbridge has decided, okay, and without any consultation, they put a gas main on 3 of the 4 corners, okay? Northeast, southeast, okay, and southwest, okay? And approximately 100 yards from there, okay, there's another gas main, okay, on something called the Festival Walkway, which is the only entrance from Bloor Street to Yorkville Park. Okay, this sits right in the middle of the walkway. Now, the ones on, we spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars fixing up Bloor Street. Okay, Toronto thinks of themselves as a world-class city. Okay, I used to live in New York. Okay, I visit New York regularly. Okay, I walk down Fifth Avenue. I walk down Madison Avenue. I don't see gas mains. I don't know where they are, but I don't see gas mains. And yet we seem to think that it's fine to put these gas mains on our streets. Okay? Now, I just wanted to show you one example where, in fact, there may be some hope. Okay? I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is Manulife Center. They just opened up the sidewalk. And there used to be a gas main here. I couldn't believe it. I said, where the hell did it go? Well, they buried it in the inside of the building. Okay? They put it inside this, and they've now put the structure there. I guess Manulife decided they didn't want this ugly thing sitting outside. $100 million or $100 whatever million renovation sitting on their sidewalk. Okay? I actually had to look just to see, make sure that, in fact, that gas main existed. And there it is. It's behind the screen, but, you know, you can just sort of make it out. The other example I wanted to give, okay, is the one, okay, at 21 Avenue Road. This one has been sitting here since 2013. When I asked the planner of the area, Oren Tamer, back in 2013, he says, don't worry, okay, it's going to be buried, okay, in the north wall of the new tower, okay, beside the old Four Seasons. Okay, there's going to be a little plaza, and it's going to be buried there. Well, this year, I contacted and I asked Oren, I said, when is it going to be moved? He says, good question, I'll contact the developer. 2 weeks later, I came back, and Kevin Friedrichs wrote to me, and he said, well, it's not feasible anymore to put it in the alcove, and therefore we're going to put it in the middle of the plaza, okay, which is going to be between the 2 towers, okay. This is where it's going right now, okay. It was going to be buried in the north wall of that tower on the right-hand side. Now they've decided, no, that's not a good idea. It's not feasible. I don't know why it's not feasible. Okay, I've contacted the planners. I've contacted ABC, okay, the BIA, and the councillor's office. Okay, we've not heard anything back. Okay, looks like they're just continuing on. The site plan was approved back in 2013. Now they're looking to amend it.
Bill, can I ask you for your final thought?
Okay, my final thought is, you know, we're not residents, we're not Manulife. We can't just sort of say, okay, let's move this gas main and hide it.
Thank you very much.
We depend on the city to, in fact, do this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Bill? Seeing none. Pam Goodair. Pam? Oh, come on up. Welcome. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on this clock over here.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm going to read to you from my letter, which I think is probably the best thing for me to do today. I wrote a letter about the bunker in J. McPherson Park, and when construction started, I wondered what they were doing. And since I walk by there on a daily basis, I live on Marlborough, just steps away from the park. I loved turning the corner onto the laneway and being able to see the park straight ahead of me. It always filled me with a calm feeling and wonderment of a little piece of Eden right here in our neighborhood, in contrast to the hustle and bustle only feet away. I walked my dog and previous dogs in the park and would often sit on the bench with her on my knee, and we would watch the world go by, surrounded by trees, grass, birds, and content that all was well with the world. Unfortunately, I became ill with pneumonia and had to be hospitalized. Recovery was long and difficult. I was glad to have survived and to be able to go and sit in the park. Sitting was a big part of recovery, as I couldn't walk for too long. The park was always there. Then the construction started, and I couldn't figure out what they were doing. On many occasions, I asked the workers, "What are you doing? What is that?" There was always a duty police officer on site who would shush me away. And a supervisor, I think they wear the white hats, who would say, "Oh, you're going to love it." And I'd answer, "Well, what is it? You're going to bury it, aren't you?" I now feel very guilty that I didn't have the energy to pursue it at the time. Now I am so upset by this ugly intrusion into our beautiful park. Some of us have to look at it daily, and when trying to sit in the park, it intrudes into your psyche and your well-being. Removing it is not just about money and trees. A lot of the trees are in bad shape and need replacing, and we can replace the trees. We can't replace the tranquility and a sense of community and well-being just sitting there and being quiet or watching the world go by. This monstrosity will be there forever unless it's relocated, and Enbridge knew exactly what they were doing, but they forged ahead, hoping no one would notice or complain. They need to learn a lesson that you just can't get away with doing whatever you want, not considering the consequences. I'll bet none of the engineers, supervisors, and workers have to look at this daily. I'll bet none of them have even come back and had a look since they finished the job. So that's basically all I have to say, except that these structures are, popping up like mushrooms all through the city. There's so many, the previous speaker showed some of them. They're very ugly, and I'm very upset.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to clarify that when you had approached the workers on site and you sought to get more information about what was being installed, it didn't sound like they were very helpful. Did they give you any indication of what was going to be installed in the park?
No, there would just be the duty police officer would be, the guy in the white hat would sort of, it's like, you go get rid of her, right? And he'd come over and say, "Ma'am, you have to move, you can't, but I want to see what you're doing. No, you can't come over here, it's dangerous, you have to leave." About 3 occasions, same thing. Every time I tried to go, I was just shushed away.
And as a member of the public and a taxpayer, you would have a right to know what was actually happening, being constructed in your public park, would you not say?
Well, yes, I certainly thought that I did have. You go on the assumption that maybe they got the proper approvals, et cetera, and I just wanted to know what it is. I've lived in the area since 1983. I love the area. I love that park. That's my closest park.
And then finally, because Enbridge Gas is also a public utility, and recognizing that there was not adequate notification provided to the local residents, even when you proactively try to get information, it sounded like they were not going to give it to you, nor did they even direct you to a notification, any notice. They gave you zero hint on what was being constructed. Is that correct?
That is correct. No, they just shushed me off, didn't refer me to anybody. I asked one time, who's the supervisor or the foreman or whatever, and no, they just wanted to move me on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Pam, thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who want to make a presentation to the committee. If you could come up and identify yourselves to the clerks here. Just please, could you clerks put up their hands so that people can see where you are? You could just tell the clerks that you'd like to make a deputation. Okay. Thank you. Could you tell us your name, please?
Good morning. My name is Ian Carmichael.
Good morning, Ian. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch the clock on the right wall there.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Carmichael, and I'm the co-president of the ABC Residents Association, one of the oldest residents association in the City of Toronto. Funnily enough, the history of ABC is intimately tied to parks preservation and trees. Our Residents Association was founded in 1957 for the purpose of saving what is now Ramsden Park from the development of 2 high-rise towers. Since that time, our many volunteers over the years have worked selflessly to improve our community. We've been involved in many park improvements in our neighborhood, including Ramsden, Jesse Ketchen, Jamie McPherson, Frank Stollery, as well as some of the other ones. As you all know, our neighborhood has been at the epicenter of intensification over the past 15 years. Tens of thousands of new units have come into our neighborhood, and with this, we have increased demand on our parks as well as our public realm, since they have to be shared by so many more residents. So here we find ourselves defending and protecting the public space in our neighborhood. How did we get here? What transpired that... Oh, sorry, Leanne. Pictures? I'm sorry about that. What transpired, essentially? The before and after picture. There we go. This is what the Enbridge installation looked like before we started. The consultation involved was basically to upgrade existing upgrading additional structure, and there were no major modifications. This is what we ended up with afterwards. It's certainly what we didn't anticipate, and it's really why we're here today. As you can imagine, the city has policies and procedures in place to ensure that appropriate consultation with the community takes place prior to any major work being done. I won't go into all the flaws and omissions in this process, but it's safe to say that since both the city and Enbridge are agreeing to this move, we know those procedures were not followed in this case. We are here today because Enbridge believes they can disfigure our parks and public realm as long as they claim safety. Their cynical response to the death of an employee was by remarkable coincidence to insist that their gas installations could no longer be vaulted for safety reasons. Installing these at grade and on public realm rather than underground, as in every other city that aspires to be world-class, it's an indictment of city staff whose job it is to protect the collective interest, not just those of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Enbridge has blighted an important park in our neighborhood, and we are all here to fix this bad decision. And we appreciate that Councillor Layton recognizes the importance of setting it right, as did his predecessor, Councillor Wong Tam, and we thank them for their efforts. The correct solution really is to vault or bury the installation at its current location, something that an independent engineer we consulted say is absolutely achievable and safe. The problem is, of course, money, and it's cheaper to have it above ground, so we're gonna bear the cost of their ugly installation in our public park so they can save money. The cost to move this is not small, but the cost to not move this is much greater, frankly. This is something that the community will have to live with forever. Of course, we do not want this relocation to damage the trees in the park. As it's been mentioned previously, most of the trees in the park that are being damaged are in this back corner. As you can see, 3 of them are leaning severely, and 1 of them is only in fair condition. No one cares more about trees than ABC. We are not willfully damaging trees, but we think that there's a greater benefit in moving this and replanting the park than living with it for the rest of our days. The corner of the park that the installation will be relocated to is derelict. I mean, you can look, you can see that it's a collection of garbage, bike tires, wine rack, and also assorted debris. We recognize, however, that further construction will be disruptive to those living with the park, and we think that this short-term pain is worth the long-term gain. In the end, this discussion should be about the collective interest and the long-term planning, as it was over the past years after many meetings with city staff, our councillors, and executives Enbridge Gas. All parties came to the conclusion that it was in the best interest of the community that this large and imposing box be relocated to a less prominent area of the park, where it will not detract from its beauty and the enjoyment of this little amount of green space in our community.
Ask for your final thought, please.
Let's not forget that Jay McPherson, a neighbor for whom the park is claimed, would have used her formidable satiric skills to support the relocation of this monstrosity to a better space.
Much.
Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions of the deputy? No, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leanne Miller. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Leanne Miller, and I reside at 111 McPherson Avenue, where I've lived for 27 years. I am also on the board of the ABC Residents Association. I was appalled to see the Enbridge District Station, the bunker as we refer to it, pop up in the park in early 2017. As you know by now, it's a small park, and the bunker is right beside both the sidewalk and the walkway through the park, as you can see in these photos. Sorry, I left that up. Okay, the photo doesn't, I mean, it's hard to actually take from the photo what the size of the box is. So it's actually we measured it, 1.62 meters tall, which is taller than me, 3.35 meters long, and 2.54 meters wide. The bollards around the bunker extend the length along McPherson Avenue to 5.79 meters. It occupies a disproportionate amount of actual and visual space in a prominent area of our small park. I started to investigate how the bunker could have been installed in this location and discovered the municipal consent requirements that govern utility installations in the right-of-way. Through access to information requests of the city, I found that Enbridge Gas and the city did not follow the process specified in the MCRs. Those requirements specifically provide that a full stream application process for the construction of new surface infrastructure involving the relocation, removal, or alteration of adjacent infrastructure is required. So that's a full stream is required. The Enbridge District Station did not use a full stream process. They used a short stream process, which did not require the additional considerations and levels of review that would have, and I'm quoting, included consideration to reducing the negative visual impact to passing motorists, pedestrians, and adjacent property owners. So Enbridge did not do that because the full stream process was not followed. The requirements also provide notifications for all properties that will face or have a line of sight to the proposed plant. That written notification states that it shall clearly describe the size, appearance, and location of the proposed plant. While I understand Enbridge did provide some form of notification, it did not specify the exact location in the park, it did not describe a box as large as what was installed, and it did not mention that it would be surrounded by bollards that amplify the visual size of the installation. The requirements state that any construction activity in the vicinity of trees shall be carried out in strict compliance with the specified tree protection policy. Enbridge did not comply with this policy, and while digging, injured a tree to the extent that it ultimately had to be removed. The city actually had to issue a stop work order and required Enbridge to apply for a permit to destroy a tree, which at that point was beyond saving. Our councillor at that time, Wong Tam, objected to this tree removal. So why do I review all this history? Because these failures to adhere to the process have left us with this massive bunker in our small park. It should never have been installed in this location, and I believe the requisite processes would have required Enbridge to find a more appropriate location for the bunker. The bollards around the box are required to protect the district station because it's beside a busy street. The bollards will not be required if the district station is moved to the corner. We are also concerned about the current location from a safety perspective. There have been incidents where gas pipes in the right-of-way have been hit by vehicles, causing evacuations and damage. In fact, in considering rules relating to the placement of utility installations in the public right-of-way, on May 22, 2018, City Council passed a motion that requested the Ontario Energy Board and the CRTC to review and update their safety standards for above and below grade utility infrastructure. I'm wondering if this request has been made and whether any such review has been conducted. Surely the proliferation of larger utility installations in the city warrants such a review. Our Residents Association has spent 2.5 years dealing with this issue. We were told 2 years ago that the bunker was going to be moved.
Leanne, could I ask for your final thought, please?
And nothing has been happened. The bunker will be in its location, its existing location forever if action is not taken to move it now.
Thank you very much.
Community Council
Right, I have to
will
cut you off there.
Thank you.
Any questions of Leanne? No? Seeing none? Oh, hello. I don't have your name.
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Mary Helen Spence.
Mary Ellen Smith? Thank you, Mary.
Spence.
Sorry? Spence.
Yes, thank you.
Give me
I
just a
am
sec.
one of Leanne's colleagues on the board of the ABC Residents Association, and little did we know in 2017 when we responded to emails asking us what was happening in J. McPherson Green, the challenging 2.5 years ahead of us. Less did we anticipate that solving that community problem might lead to others. As Ian has said, it is really Enbridge Gas that has led us all here today. They can read the municipal consent regulations that govern them, but they chose the fast and easy way rather than the respectful, safe, and considerate way. We hope they have learned a lesson from this. We should put the Enbridge folly back in the vault from whence it emerged. And failing that, we should relocate it to the rear corner. It's the best and least intrusive place for it to be. Yes, there will be short-term pain, but it is best for the long-term decision and of the community. I understand representatives of Enbridge Gas are here today. I hope they are hanging their heads in shame at the disruption they have caused, and as Mr. Pears demonstrated earlier, continue to cause. I want for a minute to address the issue of cost. Cost in dollars, cost to our public space, and cost to our public safety. There is no doubt in my mind that Enbridge should be footing the bill to move the bunker. But let us for a moment look at the few of the other costs resulting from Enbridge Gas's policies. I'd like you to have a look at a couple of headlines from the press in the last year only. Just down the road, a car slammed into one of their installations in front of Hazelton Place. The street was closed for 6 hours, and the residents, the senior citizens living in that facility, were in the dark without electricity for about another 5. Here again, very similarly, in a different neighborhood, but the same story. A car crashing into another of their installations near a street. In both cases, the neighborhoods were closed to car and pedestrian traffic for many hours. Police, fire, and ambulances were called. No one was hurt, but clearly these pipes should not be placed next to busy roads like Avenue Road. And what was the cost to the taxpayer of these incidences? Hundreds of thousands of dollars? Were those costs charged back to Enbridge Gas? I think not. And how about the cost to public space? J. McPherson Green is only one of the sad examples, and you have seen some that were showed to you earlier. The practice of placing the gas installations in front of buildings, on sidewalks, in public space, and near roads, such as the location of J. McPherson Green, must be stopped and reversed. Other major cities either bury these underground or place them in innocuous locations, inaccessible and invisible to the general public. They do not deface the public realm, nor are there any concerns that they will be hit by a vehicle. Enbridge, I'm sure you're here today. We understand you have a job to do to get the gas to our homes and businesses, but you also have a responsibility to improve your corporate practice and pay more respect and attention to the consequences of your actions. You have an obligation to live up to your stated corporate social responsibility tenets and corporate values that state safety, integrity, and respect, so that everyone in our neighbourhood and beyond can enjoy a safe, aesthetically pleasing, and livable community. We hope that City Council will make sure and make no mistakes. We will continue to speak out and oppose Enbridge gas policies that are not in the best interest of their customers or the City of Toronto. And we will work in the future, as we have in the past, to support the residents of McPherson who will be disrupted by this move, and you've heard from some of them today, and to work and to improve the city's trees, which is aging. And we know that Councillor Layton and Councillor Wong Tam, as she has done in the past, will support our communities. I also want to say that this issue is really not about individual interests. It is about the public interest, and it's about the future. It's not about what might happen over a period of very disrupted
Could I ask for your final
communities.
thought, please?
We will hope and we will work and hope that the disruption to this community will be solved.
Thank you very
And we hope
much.
that we will remain friends in the process, and we will work to ensure that Enbridge Gas
Thank you.
lives up to their responsibilities.
Thank you.
Thank
Are
you
there
very
any
much.
questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mary Ellen.
Questions?
No, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Okay, I see none. Are there any questions of staff? Different item? Okay. Questions of staff? No? Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much. I'll be moving the staff recommendations on the item. This was an impossible situation. The situation predates my involvement, but in speaking with the previous local councillor, it's clear that for years, the community and the local councillor at the time, Councillor Wong Tam, explored other options, trying to address this issue with Enbridge in order to help ease some of the concerns of the community over what is a significant utility infrastructure installation in a city park. Now, after these years of work, this was the option they came up with. As you've heard, there will be an easement on the site, but if you look at the diagram in the report, the easement is limited and is underground for most of the site, and the size, the physical size of the installation could be reduced as a result of it moving locations to a less central part of the park. Now, green space is at a premium in every neighborhood in our community, but none more than neighborhoods that are experiencing significant development pressure. ABC is probably one of the fastest growing neighborhoods if you take its wider boundaries with the Yorkville neighborhood in the country. We're constantly looking for green space, but we can't invent anymore. And oftentimes we can't outbid developers for that space. So we're left with trying to squeeze the most out of the limited green space we have. This installation came as a shock for everyone. And I think it taught the city, and I think it taught Enbridge, and the community, but mostly and more importantly, Enbridge and the city, some pretty significant lessons about how we should treat approvals for these installations. They cannot be taken lightly. We cannot use a rubber stamp on things that cost this much to move and that can cause this level of frustration. amongst community members. There was an expectation that the community would be involved, and I think we've heard the message loud and clear. This outcome is not ideal. Unfortunately, if it's moved, it's also this isn't the last stage in the approval process. And I'll commit to continuing to try to explore other options. But if we are going to take this option through, then we need to get on with making this approval, and it was years in the making. If there is another option, we'll work with community to try to see what we can implement. But I think when we're weighing things like the preciousness of public and green space, the notion that we put a large and with respect, intrusive and ugly piece of infrastructure, of utility infrastructure in the middle of a park we've named after a community member, when we weigh those with some of the impacts around the easement in the future, the tree canopy that will be impacted, and I should say we will work to try to limit that impact as much as possible. In my experience, and I'm sure other councillors have experienced this too, forestry, when they write reports, seem to be far more eager to fire up the chainsaws than when you actually go onto the ground and look at what needs to be removed. We'll work with them on that and protect what we can. But when you have to weigh between those things, I've heard loud and clear from the Residents Association that this is a direction they still would like to pursue, but they're not closing doors if we can get Enbridge to consider lowering or making the installation less intrusive in its current location. So we will try to continue those discussions. I'd like to thank the local city councillor for taking, I think, what must have been a very difficult decision at the time in response to a very difficult situation. So thank you, Kristen, Councillor Wong-Tam, for moving this forward, and I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Wong-Tam.
Yes, thank you. And I want to just acknowledge the deputants who came out today. Thank you very much for coming out to sharing the wide range of opinions. I recognize that there is quite that conversation, the process that we've all been stuck in, and especially with the new local councillor, is not ideal. But coming back to one particular point that was raised, and I think it needs to be highlighted again and again, is around the process. And I recognize that many of the deputants did speak to that. The process around locating utilities above ground has taken not just this neighborhood by surprise, but many neighborhoods by surprise. I have seen ugly infrastructure pop up in front of brand new condominium towers, as well as commercial buildings in the Bloor-Yorkville area and the downtown communities, along the entertainment district, wherever you can think of, after putting in all that time and effort to beautify the streets, to put in the public realm investments, a utility company somehow pops up afterwards and places a very large structure onto the public sidewalk that you've actually just spent millions of dollars, including granite, in Bloor-Yorkville, without any consideration or conversation with anyone. This has been much to the anger of, I know, developers who've actually protested and raised their concerns. This has now happened on the lawns of important religious organizations in the Midtown community, much to the chagrin of those communities. It has now happened in this small, very intimate little pocket park of the city. And I think that, it really highlights an absolute disrespect to civic spaces in our urban environment. If we had acres and acres of parkland here that this structure popped up in front of, maybe we wouldn't have the same tension that's arose. And I think that is really at the core of what it is that you've got utility companies that have largely, and in this case it's Enbridge, but they're not the only violators, I would say. But Enbridge, Toronto Hydro, I've seen Canada Post boxes just pop up again after lots of consideration. What I think is important for residents to note is that because of your advocacy, even though it may seem like a distance now, is that the City of Toronto has actually put forward and adopted the universal equipment placement guidelines in 2018. And what that did was it actually improved the accountability in the utility cut process as well. So therefore, now in the new process, local communities have to be given much greater notification. There is actually a requirement on the utility companies to describe in detail what is the physical structure that's going to be placed out in the public realm. They have to give a rationale on why they are suggesting that particular location. They also have to give a backup rationale to explain the process of, is there an alternative space that can go to? So therefore, it's not just this is it, and there's no other consideration. This is our first choice. This will be our second choice as a backup. And I can tell you that staff worked really hard to negotiate this with the utility companies, and even then, there was significant pushback from the utility companies because they don't see that as their core business. Maintaining beauty in our parks and public spaces is not their core business. They see their core business as basically delivering service to the households and businesses that need it. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we can actually meld the two together. And so that was a direct policy outcome that came out of this, what I call a public relations disaster for Enbridge Gas, even though it looks like the City of Toronto is wearing significant portions of it. But that was a significant structural process fix that came out of it afterwards. And so to that, I want to tip my hat to ABC Residents Associations, because you worked really hard to make sure that the staff understood what the required changes would be needed to fix this process in the long run. And then to thank the Councillor Layton for carrying this process through to the very end. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak to the item? No? We have a motion to adopt the staff recommendations in front of us. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Members, first, I want to acknowledge the presence in the committee room of a former member and chair of this committee. Janet Davis is here. Hello, Janet. Welcome back. I'm sure you have lots of wisdom to share with us today. Next, I want to do a little bit of agenda management. Councillor Wong Tam, you have a motion to reconsider item 10.25?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to reopen that item.
Okay, all those in favor of reopening that item? Any opposed? Do you have a motion on this item?
Yes, I do. I do have a motion. If I can ask the clerk to please put that on the screen. This will be a motion that's attached to the...
If I could just ask people who are leaving the room to leave quietly so that we can conduct our business. Thank you. Councillor Wong Tam?
Yes, thank you. This is a motion that adds on top of the previous amendments I made. And at this particular stage, at the preliminary reporting stage, I want to ask the City Council to direct the applicant to state in all marketing materials, condominium disclosure documents, and sales agreements that the future owner, tenant, or sublet tenant, or any other occupant or guest will be prohibited from applying for on-street permit parking, and that the building will be excluded from any on-street permit specified area. I'm doing this at the upfront stage. It has been extremely challenging to catch every application downstream. I think that if members want a copy of this motion, let's circulate it. You can name it whatever you want, but I am recognizing that in the new Ward 13, there were a number of buildings that, especially in the West Don Lands community, in the Corktown community, that were not necessarily excluded. So we now want to get in front of it and not be caught behind it. So thank you very much.
So I have a couple of questions of the mover. First, Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, there is one other thing that often happens, I'm not sure you're aware of, where a development that comes in with one address might change the address later, and it gets lost. So would you be willing to look at this motion to say and include any further address changes after the approval of the development?
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Fletcher. I think your suggestion is very helpful, so I'd be happy to make some amendments to make sure we capture the entire block, regardless of what municipal address it is finally assigned.
I have had that happen twice.
Yeah, that's great. It's good
and
to know.
This is because people will come back and say, I didn't know that. So you're putting the onus on the developer, on the real estate agent, on anybody who has a contract for that person to be clear when they're purchasing that that's not available for them at that municipal address or any other municipal address that may be assigned to that location.
Yes, the intention is to close the loophole and to be as upfront and as transparent. So therefore, any prospect buyers and tenants would know entirely at the beginning of the process, before they actually commit to purchasing, that on-street parking is not permitted to them.
Could you change to include the municipal, any future change of municipal address that might be different than the development application?
Yes, I can do that.
That would be great. Thank you.
If I need to hold that down just to get that cleaned up, I'm happy to do so. Okay.
Councillor, can I ask,
Yeah, I'll hold that down.
just to assist the clerk, is there a restriction on this location from getting on-street permit parking already? Or is that something you're moving today?
I don't know the answer to that per se.
Why don't we hold this down while we sort that detail out? Fair enough?
Yes, that's fair.
And Councillor Cressy, can you hold your questions till we get back to it? And I understand, we just need to sort something out? Okay? Okay, very good. So we're going to hold this one down. Councillor Bailao, you had held, or Councillor Bradford had held items 10, 11, and 40 on your behalf. Are we ready to deal with those now?
Yes, I am. If I could have item 1010, residential demolition application 304 Brock. So move the alternate recommendations.
Okay, so on the alternate recommendations, all those in favor? Okay. One moment while the clerk's... No, it's the
Alternate recommendations.
The refusal.
I don't know.
Well, no, wait now, sorry.
It's approve.
It's
The
one
alter-
or the other?
So you're moving two?
Alternative,
Not
approve.
Okay, 2 is to approve, so
Yeah,
you're moving
it
them...
says in the report,
We're all
one,
good.
or the alternative.
Everyone understands.
2 is approve the
2,
application.
okay.
Yeah.
So, on item 1010, Councillor Bailao is moving motion 2. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item 10.11, residential application, demolition application 1 Peel Avenue.
I'm going to have to move to defer this application for one cycle.
Defer for one to the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of the deferral, opposed, carried. On item 10.40, reduction of permit parking hours, Pelham Avenue. Councillor Bailao.
Approve the recommendations.
On the recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And I believe that's all that was held in your name? Or, sorry, 5, oh no, that's...
1052?
We haven't done those yet.
Yep, okay.
I need a motion to introduce items 55 and 56. Councillor Cressy, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Councillor Wong Tam, you had an interest.
Yes, I need to declare an interest in item TE 10.55, expansion of Victoria Memorial Square Park. My family and I own a condominium on Portland Street.
Okay, so we'll make, I understand the form's already been submitted, and when we come to that, we'll make sure that we record your absence. We're not doing it just now?
We're not doing it now?
We're not doing it just now. We've got a whole bunch of other stuff that was introduced that we haven't got to yet. Councillor Fletcher had held item 5. We were waiting for motions. Do we have those now? I don't believe 5 was held. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, no, it's the, I'm sorry about that. It's the traffic plan. It's number 29.
Number 29.
Could we just move on?
Councillor Layton, if we could just do one thing at a time,
Then
my
staff can leave.
brain wouldn't overload, and we could conduct our business more easily. Pardon me? I understand. Councillor Fletcher, you wish to release item 29?
Yes, with the following motion. I believe that Madam Clerk has that motion, and that is to assist commuters and fleets for the building out of the Portland's flood protection and thank everybody for their hard work after I deferred it last time. Thank you.
Okay, so taking the amendment together with the rest of the item, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, now we can return to item TE 10.8, Kensington Market Restaurant and Bar Study. I have a deputant listed, Dominique Russell. Dominique? Good morning, Dominique. Just settle in, make sure that the microphone is lit in front of you. You'll have 5 minutes and you can watch your time on the clock over there on the wall to the right of me. Go ahead.
So thank you. My name is Dominique Russell. I'm the co-chair of Friends of Kensington Market. I just have a few things to say about it. I really want to thank the planning for the study and the work and also the consultation that went into this. We're playing catch-up here since there was a study in 2015 that sort of never actually came to fruition. There were no recommendations made. And in the meantime, there's been an explosion of bars and restaurants in Kensington Market, as we predicted, when commercial grocers, Loblaws and Freshco in particular, have made incursions into our area, undermining independent green grocers. As the density of bars and restaurants increases, Kensington becomes less and less livable. And if we empty out Kensington Market of its residents, if it becomes a club district, we will lose a jewel, a destination for tourists and for Torontonians alike. People come for the life and the eclectic energy, which is under threat when you get a homogenization of just bars and restaurants. Many of our members, Friends of Kensington, would like to see a moratorium on bars and restaurants, that is, no new bars and restaurants. And many of our members would like to see an even smaller recommendation of 70 meters, which is what the average size is. However, we recognize that there is an urgency here. In 1991, when City Council put through the bylaw for 200 square meters, they were looking particularly at some big buildings in the market that were grocery stores or retail, that if they became bars or restaurants would make a huge impact on residences. Two of the three structures are up for rent. So we recognize that there is an urgency to doing this. So while we would prefer an even smaller recommendation, we see that 100 meters rather, is a good compromise, and it is an urgent thing to happen. It's particularly because 200 square meters is just too large. As the new calculations for how many patrons are allowed to be in that space, we're looking at 322 residents, which is with a concentration of bars that we're having, people living above a restaurant or a bar where 322 people are coming out in the evening. You can imagine what kind of impact that has on families and on anyone who lives above these bars and restaurants. And it is really important to recognize that Kensington Market isn't unlike a lot of the retail strips in the city, although a lot of those retail strips do have people living above. There is a very, very dense mix and concentration. So this is a very important bylaw to get through and to get through quickly. We trust that the Joint Committee, we also appreciate the recommendation that there be a community committee to look at how enforcement happens for bars and restaurants. I just want to say that this is one measure, and we need more measures. We're still waiting for the Heritage Conservation District. We also need to be supporting independent businesses, and I know that there's measures being considered, and I hope that those will be made quickly. We also need to support green grocers and start to look at things like tax breaks for green grocers. This is something that's not just particular to Kensington Market, but across the city. It's a really important measure. Kensington Market is a jewel of the city. It's used by the city to advertise that it's a great place. It's our historical quarter. It's the place where we get immigrants and eclectic life. It's really important to the city, and there's a number of measures that need to be taken. This is one step, and we appreciate that it is being taken today.
Thank you, Dominique. Any questions? No? That's fine. Thank you, Dominique. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the committee on this matter? Seeing none, any questions of staff? No? Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the staff recommendations in the report. This speaks to, and Dominique, I think, captured it well, our need within Kensington Market to protect what made it Kensington Market. And it's not just going to be with restricting the size of restaurant and bar space. It's going to be with protecting some of the built heritage elements as well as some of the not so built heritage elements that I think all of us know. If you grew up in Toronto, you probably have a different vision of Kensington Market. Each of us probably have a bit of a different vision because we may have seen it all at different times. And while Kensington is a constantly changing organism, there are things about Kensington that remain constant. And one of them has been a place where people can set down roots and start new businesses. And as the affordability changes, as the nature of the community changes, as it becomes more of an entertainment district rather than of a marketplace, then the rents that are required to take on space become those that only certain types of businesses can afford. And unfortunately, that we're at that point where we're about to lose, despite the fact that all those businesses were different than when I was there, and then maybe when Councillor Perks was there, and then certainly when little Joe was there. Those businesses changed. Those businesses changed over time, but now we're starting to get to the cost impacting the soul of Kensington. And so I was happy to put forward the motion that brought this through, and I know that there's been some requests for us to go smaller on the restaurant size. There's been some requests for us to go bigger. That typically denotes that we may be coming up the middle in sort of the right mix or the right size requirement. There were also requests for a maximum number of restaurants in Kensington, block by block, a proximity mechanism to restrict restaurants and bars. Those were ruled out, and I think for very good reason. That the experience in Councillor Perks' ward was that it actually had unforeseen impacts, that it would they could potentially hurt some businesses that were trying to relocate within the area in the end. And so I'm happy that staff didn't bring forward those recommendations. One thing though, and at some urging by both the community and myself, what is included, the last recommendation is to us to undertake a study around limiting chain stores in Kensington Market. And while I don't think any chain store dare try to come to Kensington Market as they have in the past for fear of significant opposition, I think this is an opportunity for us to test a mechanism to see if it's one that can be used, a planning mechanism that can be used in some jurisdictions. So I look forward to that work. I will also thank city staff, Willie, Mladen, but in particular, a young planning student named Kai, who was actually headed up this project. And I got to tell you, I've moderated public meetings before, facilitated public meetings before, since before I was a city councillor. And this planning student, who's still in school, and I hope will apply for a position in the planning department, took on, and Councillor Cressy and I have both moderated discussions within the Kensington Market community. And I think you could safely say there's some of the more challenging meetings to facilitate. And that's nothing against the wonderful people of Kensington Market. There are differing viewpoints which can be difficult to manage. Kai did a fantastic job facilitating this meeting with under the supervision of Mladen and others, but was just very good at capturing what people were saying, making them feel heard, and then he did all the research behind the report. And I think this just speaks to the caliber of young planners we have coming up through Toronto to able to pull something like this off that doesn't have a list of 80 speakers, all with differing opinions coming from Kensington Market. That is something else to be able to stick handle through. So congratulations, Kai, and please, oh please, won't you apply for a job when you finish your master's degree?
Okay, I'm just going to quickly speak to the item, and then I just think I just would like to put it on record, Councillor Layton, I would just like to put it on record, Councillor Layton, I would just like to put it on the record that in fact the final staff report on the Queen Street Parkdale concentration cap on bars deemed it a success, said that employment was up in that particular industry, that the goals of the concentration cap had been met, and that given that the industry was now concentrating its investment elsewhere in the city, it was no longer necessary to have in place. Just so that we have a clear record of what kind of public policy works in what environment. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. Very briefly, just as the former councillor here, it's often been said that the spirit of Kensington Market is around affordability, affordability of business and affordability of residential. That notion of Kensington Market being a place for all is fundamentally grounded in a place that people could live and work. There's another element here as we talk about a bar and restaurant study around the spirit of Kensington Market. In addition to affordability, it's also been that it's a daytime and a nighttime market. And there is a real risk, and I think why some of the measures being recommended here I'm supportive of, is that the balance is being tipped towards nighttime at the expense of daytime. And a healthy neighborhood has both. And so I think as it relates to the measures in front of us here, first of all, I want to congratulate Councillor Layton for working with the local community to drive forward some much needed improvements. Because I think it's fair to say that from a planning and zoning perspective, we've been trying to throw every tool in our toolbox at Kensington Market. Site and area specific policies, recommendations coming out of the bar and restaurant study, the long delayed HCD and an interim control bylaw that was put in place during the HCD, working with MLS to try to legalize non-conforming awnings around the market. We're trying to throw every planning tool in the toolbox at it, and they're all necessary. But fundamentally, we as a government need to acknowledge that when you're dealing with downtown neighborhoods, rising property values, gentrification and the associated impacts, intervention in the market is what is necessary. Intervention in the housing market to purchase housing, to take it off the private market and put it back into public, nonprofit and cooperative ownership. That's intervention in the housing market to make it more affordable. And intervention in the commercial market, whether that's advocating for commercial rent controls provincially, whether that's looking at the stick approach in terms of planning and zoning changes we can make that we're dealing with here, but also looking at the carrot approach as it relates to a real conversation around commercial bonusing, such as rebate programs for certain types of business that otherwise are displaced. And so this is one piece of a big puzzle as it relates to building affordable neighborhoods for business and residents in drastically increasing property value neighborhoods, but it requires intervention in market forces, and this is one of those components, and I want to congratulate the local neighborhood and Councillor Layton for doing what I didn't get done and putting it over the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow.
Well, you may wonder why a Midtown councillor wants to speak on this item, and the reason is because while this is principally a really special downtown community, this is a neighborhood that we all love as Torontonians. And it's one of the go-to areas if I have a friend or family visiting from out of town, as I believe many of us do. This is one of the places that we visit and we want to show off Toronto with, because It is Toronto. It's this vibrant urban feel that meets Chinese market, that meets shtetl, that meets Latin American market. It is so remarkable, but it's vulnerable. Every neighborhood evolves and changes over time, and sometimes for the better. But there are basic tenets of this neighborhood that I believe, as Councillor Cressy said, that intervention, thoughtful intervention, smart intervention can contribute to allowing it to both retain what we love about it while improving upon it to make it more affordable and more accessible to people who live there and the people who want to do business there, to make it more pedestrian friendly, to make it more of everything we love while protecting what we don't want to lose. So I just wanted to say on behalf of the residents in Midtown who come down to the market and really appreciate what it has to offer. We love you. We appreciate both the local residents who fight for the place that we love, and to the local councillor, and to, Councillor Cressy's, valiant efforts. Obviously, Councillor Layton was able to do much more with what he had, but to both of you and to all of you.
Nobody's keeping score.
We are grateful. Thank you.
Any other members who wish to speak to this item? No, seeing none. On the recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Next, TE 10.9, demolition of a property subject to intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 206 Russell Hill Road. Are there any members of the public?
I just wanted to alert you that I'm going to be moving that this be removed, given that I actually already moved at council, the previous council.
Sorry. I'm told, my bad. The clerk had already removed it from the agenda.
No.
Oh, no.
No, I'm.
Motion to withdraw.
Oh, okay, you have to move it.
Stick with me on
I
this.
really don't know what I'm doing.
I will tell you very clearly, we already seized this at the previous council meeting, so I'm simply going to move to remove it from the agenda.
Okay. I'll take it that written in white letters on this screen.
Give me a blank check.
Yeah, okay.
And I will fill it in.
We all understand what we're voting on to withdraw the item. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Item TE 10.10, residential demolition application 304 Brock.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did that. Sorry, yeah, that's right. I'm working,
I may have to declare an interest, and I just wasn't, I missed
on
that.
what?
Brock?
We've already voted on it.
Yeah, can I reopen that and walk out of the room, please?
We didn't
Well, I
record
don't
it.
know that, yeah.
We didn't record
And it's
it.
not a recorded vote, so.
Okay.
Now that I've
so
identified it.
I will accept a motion to reopen 1010. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Can I declare an interest?
Councillor, what is the nature of your interest?
Yeah, that, and I will put this in writing subsequent to my remarks, that my sister owns a property at the Brock Lofts.
Okay. If I could ask you to step out of the chamber?
Brock Lofts.
Don't go far.
Okay, so now we need to do a recorded vote. So
Can I have a recorded vote on item 1010? All those in favor? Councillor Cressy, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Fletcher, I need you in your chair when we're doing, I need you actually in your chair when we do this. Just doing what the clerk tells me. Councillor Cressy, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Bailao, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Perks, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Layton. None opposed, that is unanimous. If someone could let Councillor Matlow know that he's welcome back in the room now. Welcome back, Councillor Matlow. Next, we have item TE 10.12, residential demolition application 12 Ossington Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Cressy.
Yes, and I have a motion if.
just a moment. We're getting
Go ahead, Joe.
So I have a motion, which is to approve the application to demolish with conditions that we've worked on with the applicant. And with those conditions, I can move the motion to approve.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 10.13, residential application 57 Elm Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you. I have a deferral motion, a referral,
Okay.
a deferral motion to send it back to get a report from Heritage Preservation
Okay.
Services.
Understood. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 10.15, residential demolition application 61 Elm Street. Councillor Layton.
Yes, this is the same motion. This is a row of of row houses that are being applied to demolish. I just want to make sure we're not, in doing so, removing all 5 of these houses one by one.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 10.15, residential demolition application 61 Elm Street.
Trying to do it in a sneaky way.
Councillor Layton.
Yes, I'll move the same motion.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item TE 10.16, residential demolition application 338 Markham Street. Councillor Layton.
Yes, I'll move to deny the recommendation, or the request.
Deny?
The staff recommendation to deny.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Refuse.
Carried.
I'm sorry.
Item TE 10.17, application to remove a private tree, 175 Walmer Road. I have a deputant, Ross Stroger. There are like only 4 ways to say that, and I got all 3 wrong.
I've had it my whole life. I've had it my whole life.
Sorry.
I guess.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes. You can see your time over there on the clock on the wall to the right of me.
Thank you very much. I guess it's good afternoon. My name is Ross Stroger. I'm the owner of 175 Walmer Road. Firstly, I'd just like to thank council for allowing the deferral of this hearing. Last month, I was unable to make it due to the 1 week of notice, so I'm here today. I provided some comments online yesterday, just showing an email that I sent to city staff back on June 10th of 2019. It highlights a few other items, but in case you didn't have a chance to review, included the facts that I had hired a qualified and reputable arborist who opined on the fact that the tree in question did exhibit signs of fungal disease, dieback, and needle cast. Additionally, I did provide additional evidence to support the contention from both the ground and from the top story of my house. The city staff were only able to observe the tree from the ground. Again, these diseases were confirmed by the arborist that I did hire. I think it's worth noting in the staff report issued that none of these symptoms were observed at the time of inspection. I was able to arrange for an on-site meeting on June 27th with city staff who were able to observe these symptoms. However, they noted at the time that these diseases were not terminable and therefore didn't meet the criteria to remove, at which point I asked what exactly the criteria was. They referred to a checklist, which I asked for a copy of. To date, I have not received a copy of that checklist. I just would have thought transparency would have been important in this process. One criteria that I did recall from that conversation was that the tree needed to be 66% or 2/3 dead in order to meet the requirement to remove. I suggested at the time that it was probably at least 40% dead, and there was no disagreement from city staff at that time. Just some general context on this tree and my property. As noted in my email, it's only really observed by a small group of houses that back onto a dead-end laneway. It does negatively affect my neighbors to the north and to the south from a nuisance of the needle cast. Additionally, based on the location of the tree, it's next to impossible to grade the backyard appropriately to drain water away from the foundation of mine and my neighbors to the south foundations. And generally, I have concerns about the ingress of the roots into these century-old foundations. A few items just to address directly from the staff report. It points out like a quote-unquote deck that was built in the backyard. This is essentially a staircase. The walkout and landing was the smallest allowable under building code to get from the door to the ground. The report also contends that homes with mature trees have higher values relative to those without. Even if this were true, I'd suggest that this particular tree is an exception. The report also contends that trees can function to reduce crime. Not only was my car broken into out back, but the cover of the tree didn't allow for any security footage of the actual break-in itself. For the record, I'm not against deforestation of our city. I have offered to plant more than one tree. I actually offered on multiple occasions to plant 2 trees in order to replace this tree that I'm looking to take down. So I appreciate your consideration of this matter, and I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? No? Thank you for your time. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? I see none. Councillor Layton.
Just a question to staff under the how much of the tree is exhibiting the fungal disease.
Through the chair, we didn't have a precise number there, but we would say that it didn't meet the threshold of 66%.
Is this checklist that the deputant referred to a public thing?
Yeah, anything in our file is available to the public. And once a file is closed, available to the public, anything in that file is available to the applicant at any time.
What's needle cast? This is the tree shedding its needles?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's in this case caused by a fungal infection. We didn't observe that fungal infection.
You didn't observe the fungal infection on the first visit, but on the second visit you did?
I'd have to double check with staff on that inspection. I wasn't there, but it was our opinion that the shedding of needles wasn't related to a fungal infection.
It was not related?
No.
What would it be related to?
So a coniferous tree will regularly shed needles, just regular life process, and that's what we have observed in this case.
Okay, and what evidence of damage to the tree was there from the building of this deck? It didn't refer to anything specific.
Right, so when we had inspected the tree, the deck was already built. We had no way of knowing, the root damage. What we observed were piles built for the deck that, taken together, would not have, we think, significantly injured the tree.
Okay, so but it wasn't to the canopy or crown; it was to the roots.
Yes.
Did you see any grading issues as a result of like the water not being able to drain properly from the back of the house? Was that witnessed, or is that something you'd even look for?
So the deck, as I recall, covers the area closest to the foundation within the root zone of the tree. So it would have been impossible for us to see the grade changes below the deck adjacent to the foundation.
And does the deck have a canopy? I can't tell by the pictures here, but does the rear deck have a canopy? No, it's...
No, I believe not.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Speak?
Yeah, sure. I'll move the staff recommendation. I think it's clear we have a canopy goal within the City of Toronto. We need to do all we can to fulfill that goal. That the tree is not visually in the inventory you might see from the street, but only visible from a back laneway. I don't think that takes away from the value, the ecological value of the tree itself. When the tree is at a state that it can't be, or that it's injured to a point from this fungal disease that it can be removed, I suspect that urban forestry will grant permission to remove it. But until then, this tree could have decades of life left on it. And if we were just to cut down every tree that the needles and leaves were a nuisance, we'd probably have very few trees in some neighborhoods. That perhaps in all neighborhoods that didn't have private gardeners to go and collect all the leaves, bag them, and put them out on the curb. or maybe in Etobicoke where they get mechanical leaf collection. But tending to our urban canopy is part of our responsibility as a community, and there is a strong effort within this community to protect the tree canopy, and I don't think that Community Council is in a position or presented here with evidence to stop doing that. So I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay. Anyone else to speak on the item? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Next item, TE 10.18, refusal of a Boulevard Cafe permit application located at 796 Bloor Street West, Crawford Street flankage. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Layton.
This item I'll be deferring until January.
Okay.
So that's 2 cycles. Do you not have a motion? No? Oh, so for the next
That's all
2
right.
items,
We've got
it'll be
it
the
now.
same.
All those in favor of the motion to defer? Opposed? Carried. Item TE 10.19, issuance of a Boulevard Cafe permit located at 12 Clinton Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Layton.
The Monarch Tavern is an institution in the city, but we only granted a small patio the last time and the first time they've ever come in for a patio application. It's surrounded by residential. It's around the corner. You got there's lots of room. You can if you want. You don't want.
Councillor Layton, you have the floor.
Sure. I have a motion to defer this 2 cycles. We've granted this application. They have had no violations, no complaints. I would like to entertain an extension of operating hours and increased seating, but I need some time to socialize the idea amongst some of the more immediate neighbors that have in the past had concerns.
I'll provide this in writing. I am going to declare a conflict. The nature of my conflict is that my spouse and I own property in the neighborhood on this side.
Declare and get out.
Get out of here. Should have done that when he was talking.
He tried. I discouraged him.
His spouse.
I want to take you out on this patio, Joe.
I thought he was going to declare an interest because he's a regular client.
Don't go far. Okay.
On the deferral.
Any other members to speak on it? We do have 5. On the deferral, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, members.
No, you have to do recorded.
Oh, sorry, we have to record it. That's correct. Councillor Bradford, Councillor Perks, Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Layton, Councillor Matlow. Okay, members, we are at 10 minutes to the lunch break. The next item has 2 deputants, so we won't be able to get through that unless we extend. We have another item with quite a number of deputants later on. My advice is that we simply break for lunch now and come back at 1:30 and continue with our business. Is that your preference, Councillor Bradford? Do people mind if we do the one item, which is item TE 10.20? Okay, so I'll need a motion to extend to complete item TE 10.20. Councillor Bradford, all those in favor, opposed, carried. I have 2 deputants listed. Shamim Ara. Shamim, please come up. Oh, you would both like to come at the same time? Are you Ashwarful Majid? Please have a seat. Okay, and since you're together, you can take up to 10 minutes, okay? So go ahead. You can watch your time over here on the clock to my right.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shamim Ara, and I'm here on behalf of our application about vending license. Which is located 2575 Danforth Avenue, 16.50 meters east of Main Street, on the south side of Danforth. We submitted this application and on November 9th, 2018, and the application that time meets the physical criteria of City of Toronto for the place and location, but in some point they there is a written objection came from Danforth Village Business Improvement Executive Director, but we are not sure what is the reasons to give any written objection about that. So we just wanted to speak about our plan that if there is a cause for any other businesses there, like any restaurants or food shop, whoever like object to put a vending cart for hot dog on that location.
So what happens here is that you come and give us your thoughts. We don't really do a question and answer with you, okay?
So we just want to like tell that our food item will be different from them, and opening hours and closing hours also be different. And like if there is any business membership we have to pay, we can like willingly to pay about that if it is any every month or every year. So that's just we wanna talk, like tell about our plan. If they have any objection about those kind of causes.
Okay, so those are your remarks? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Ashfrel?
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Because we are appealing for this business, our food is totally different than others. There is not surrounding any other business on that side. We operate till morning until midnight because there is a subway station. They are running the subway. So it is very accessible, economic, and people can afford to buy. And city also permit us and allow us that there is no problem because we shift our location. And we bring this one because there's a good earning and benefit for us. And this is a very short time people get a good quality of food, and it's very cheap. And there is no destruction or hamper for the pedestrian or whoever passing by through that zone. So in these circumstances, we're just asking that if we need any membership payment or anything or any organization, we are willing to pay also to them. That's all I want to say.
Okay. Are there any questions of the deputants? No? Oh, Councillor Bradford.
Very quickly, thanks for your deputation and coming down today. Did you have a chance to speak with the Danforth Village BIA prior to your application?
Not yet.
Would you be amendable to having a conversation and speaking with them about your
We're
proposal
willing
in
to
the
talk,
future?
yes, no problem.
Okay, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Are
you
there
very
any
much.
other members of the public who wish to make a deputation of the committee on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Bradford.
So I'm going to move the staff recommendations here, which is denying the permit today, and we're going to move forward together to try and work that out with the community. Thanks.
A question. So my understanding is if you deny it now, there's a period, there's no appeal, no. So I would caution you, no. So I have yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I would like to defer this
January.
to January.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. On the motion to defer consideration until January, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay. What is the next thing we have listed?
And then we've got a couple of items, and then mostly it's new business after that. You could,
On TE, the next item we have is TE 10,
My young friend.
10.34, Commercial Boulevard Parking Appeal 170 Bedford Road. Councillor Layton.
On a motion for this.
Still waiting on a motion? You know what? I'm just going to say recess till 1:30 at this point. Okay?
You're taking matters in your
I am taking matters in my own.